To finish off the Souls trilogy for this series, we're doing Dark Souls 3. And this is a very interesting one, as this game became significantly more linear compared to the prior games, but was also developed with a if you can see it, you can go there type of mentality, which channels some open world philosophy too, though obviously didn't turn out as one that would come later. But for a restricted run like this, will these two factors end up being a benefit or a hindrance? We will find out, won't we? So, can you beat Dark Souls 3 in its entirety without fast traveling? We have also done Elden Ring and its DLC, and we'll do the remaining games in the near future. But for now, we shall see where Dark Souls 3 falls. The main rule will be that I can't warp via bonfires to other bonfires, as this is the main method of fast travel in this game. Homeward Bones, or the Dark Sign, will also not be allowed, as they can be abused to not have to backtrack for great distances. For instance, I could simply ignore bonfires along the way in an area, use a Homeward Bone, and be warped back to where I was before, ignoring any one-way path that can be traversed backwards. The point of the run is to see if the world can be traversed on foot, forwards and backwards, so I won't be doing this. It sort of defeats the purpose. I'll also not be abusing death respawns for the same reason. Alright, that should be all. Let's get into it. Already heading into the first boss, I bled Gundry with a bandit knife and got himself to nearly half before his health bar even showed up. I parried him once, failing initially, for the rest of that half. Then he transformed. From there, I was just a little careful with quickstep, and I got him. After that, I did loot the segment before Firelink Shrine, including the Uchigatana nerd. Absolutely destroyed him with with my parry skills. Now that we're in Firelink, I immediately went to the side here to do this little tree jump skip for the extra Estus shard, which took me a little while. I'm a bit rusty, but not that long. Definitely missing the Elden Ring jump though. Also got the coveted Silver Serpent ring here, which I've forgotten was here. I leveled up a bit to be able to wield the Uchi, then place the coiled sword in the center, and... God fucking damn it. Well, run over. Have a good one. Okay, no, obviously I still made a video out of this that wasn't just 3 minutes long. So I'm going to allow this orb to the overworld to actually play the game, but I am not going to allow myself to travel back to Firelink Shrine, which means I have a couple of added restrictions now. Firstly, leveling. We will not be able to level any further, meaning I'll have to stick to whatever level I leave here with. Secondly, we will not have access to Andre, meaning we can't upgrade weapons or upgrade our Estus flasks, including the undead bone shards, which will surely be very fun. Thirdly, we will not have access to the shop lady and any ashes we find in the world that expands our inventory, so we'll be very limited on items that we can get without farming. And I guess lastly, would be locked out of any worthwhile NPC interactions back here in the shrine. That's all I can think of for now. Maybe I'll realize a few more drawbacks later on as we go through the run. Oh, I should mention, I am writing the script as I go, so I'm essentially going in just as blind as you are. So, what's the plan here? I can't level or upgrade weapons, so am I just going to do a low level run here? Well, not exactly. Firstly, on the weapon side of things, this is why I picked the Thief as the starter class, to have a good weapon for bleed buildup. And that's what's going to be the name of the game for this run, status effects. Since I won't be able to upgrade a weapon further, status elements like bleed, frost, and poison will be a lifesaver for not grinding some of the endgame bosses for like 30 minutes in one run. Since I already have a bandit knife for the best bleed buildup, I turned my Uchi into Fire Uchigatana with a fire gem I chose as a starter gift. It'll be a good team up with Frost later on, but maybe we'll fight bosses that are also weak to fire. We shall see. I'll talk about the other status effect weapons as I come across them. Secondly, for the Estus flasks, I guess I'm just kind of fucked for those. I'll only have access to some passively regenerating items or other healing methods I find in the game, which will be limited. I will turn my Ashen Flask into Estus to have the most of those, along with the one shard I got above Firelink. And lastly, and most importantly, levels. Well, nothing is stopping me from farming enemies here in the Cemetery of Ashes for souls, at least in theory. I did go into the run expecting to farm. I was going to try to get 27 vigor at least, but look at how many souls these enemies drop. And look at how many souls it takes to level up next. I think I'll make do with 16 vigor, honestly. My flasks aren't going to heal that much anyway. To be absolutely clear though, we already have a definitive answer. You cannot beat Dark Souls 3 without at least this fast travel, from Firelink Shrine to the High Wall of Lothric. We're going to proceed to see what else is off limits without fast travel, but we will not be returning to Firelink Shrine to level or anything of the sort. Alright, on our way to High Wall. And I die like 2 minutes in. Good start. And then my second death was a dumb fall damage death. Coming here later shows this wasn't supposed to be a deadly fall, but I guess I didn't properly land on that platform. So off to a great start. After that, I hit the second bonfire here. I am exploring the areas to get loot, so I did go into some of the side areas and stuff, before hitting the major area shortcut from the first bonfire. I did end up resting at that bonfire while I'm here, at least after this dog almost ended me, since I can't fast travel directly from the second bonfire if I end up dying to Fort, meaning I'll just have to run forward or backward to that bonfire, with the enemies respawned. After that, I did go straight to Fort just so I can spawn his bonfire, and only after that cleared the rest of the enemies and loot of the High Wall. I did pull out the Fire Uchi for Vort. I don't know if he's specifically weak to fire, but it bleeds anyway, so probably the better option. Phase 1 went pretty good. I mostly used the weapon art for big damage. But then Phase 2 was hairier than I expected it to be. I guess I'm mostly used to using gold pine resin, like in speedruns. Maybe that would have been an even better option, but I managed anyway. From there, I did clear out the enemies prior and talk to the old lady for the banner. I know what you're thinking. No. And then I made my way to the ended settlement. Due to these gargoyles, I actually don't have a way to return to the High Wall, which is another big reason why I explored fairly thoroughly. But just know that if you do a run like this for yourself. Though I will say, this is definitely one of the downfalls from Dark Souls 1. Since in that game, you can take these same gargoyles on the way back from Anerlondo to Sen's Fortress 2, whereas this game just expects you to warp back. It's not a major issue, and only affects us for this run. But consider that at this point in Dark Souls 1, we wouldn't have the Lord Vessel in order to warp, where in Dark Souls 3, it basically permits developers to only really design areas in one direction, so to speak. I did talk to Yol here just cuz, but I don't know that I'll be seeing him at all. I did grab the small leather shield here. It's very little defense, but I do want to have it for a parry option. I was using the Uchigatana hold stance parry, but I don't always want to have that equipped, so I can fast roll. I definitely take advantage of firebombs as much as possible in this game, though there wasn't many examples up until now. Just kidding, I'm never fast rolling again. I got absolutely mogged by Henrik here. It was so fucking annoying. Now, I would totally love to do Curse Rider Gradewood, but do you remember something that happens during the fight? Yeah. If you don't know, if you're new to this series, any severe dropdowns should be taken with extreme caution, meaning you should think through or verify if there's a way to loop back up to where you were before. And in this case, there wasn't. It just spawns a bonfire down here and expects you to warp. So Curse Rider Gradewood is out of the picture for a run like this. I didn't explore every single nook and cranny of the undead settlement, but I was already out of health and flask by the time I was going to leave, having me use an ember. And then I immediately died to dogs. I ran past this Aerothone Knight just to get this bonfire, and then I did fight it. He killed me twice, as I was trying to run to safety, but I killed it on the third time. And if you had to guess earlier, yeah, the Aerothone Straight Sword is gonna be my frost weapon for the run. I already got the stats to wield it. I did grab the Grass Crest shield here, because my stamina consumption was hurting a bit. Then I got into a staring contest with this crab. I fought Crystal Sage. I died once, but then I was able to get a second try. As you can probably guess, I'm going to go get the doll from Deacons, so I don't have to go through here again later on. With no fast travel available to us, you obviously want to be efficient with your pathing through the world. From here, also try to play through this area without resting, but I don't have high hopes. The shield would help with that at least. By the way, you might have noticed my soul count. Although we won't be able to take advantage of it at all as far as I know. I will try my best to hold on to them for the whole run to see how many I end up getting. Hi Gil. Bye Gil. I guess it should be mentioned, DLCs are absolutely off limits. We have no way of returning after entering them. And I died pretty quick from a Grave Warden, as expected. Inside the cathedral, I got the Lloyd Sword Ring, which would definitely be a useful one, but it did make me wonder where the shield one is. And it turns out you get it from vendor ashes. That would have been really nice for this run. Maybe should have leveled Vigor more after all. Oh well. I was running low on flasks after fighting some Cathedral Knights, so I decided to Ember, forgetting that Kirk invades you here, and then killed me. So far I'm 2 out of 2 for terrible usage of Embers. I died one more time, just looting around and trying to kill this giant, but after that I went straight to the boss. The first half of Deacons went fine, but I definitely did less damage than I expected in second phase. So it was a bit of a struggle getting through without getting shredded. I ended up running out of flasks within reach of finishing the boss. So I took one more chance on Embers, and this time it paid off. So glad I finally had a right call on using my limited resources. I do like the level design of Cathedral of the Deep, and this is a big reason why. With the very natural and well-crafted shortcuts, allowing me to leave the Cathedral pretty easily and seamlessly. I was able to get out pretty much immediately, despite being here for quite a while. Despite having to reset the enemies in Road of Sacrifices, I was able to easily run back to the Farron Woods area. Enjoy the view, because we definitely don't get to see this side of Road of Sacrifices very often. And once I got there, I got invaded by Hazel. I've officially been invaded the same amount of times in this game that I was in the whole of Dark Souls 2 by Forlorn. Not only that, but he only decided to show himself once I engaged the other 2 NPC enemies. I managed to kill one of them, but he also rejoined the other one at the worst time and killed me. Wonderful. Anyway, I got the bonfire done in Farron Woods now, so I went ahead and lit the 3 fires. Wasn't much I wanted here in the woods, so shortly after I went to get the bonfire nearest the Abyss Watchers. So let's do our first Lord Guy dudes. My first run was going fine, but I got fucking nuked off screen. I got the second phase, and I was going to Ember as I was out of flasks, but for some reason the Ember was grayed out, and I got killed before I could even do anything. And then guess what happened? Yep, very happy about that one. On my next real attempt, I had a sloppy phase 1, but I decided to pop an Ember anyway. And despite getting a bit punished, I didn't manage to clutch a win. My problem wasn't that I don't know the Abyss Watcher's moveset. It's simply the multiple enemies thing being a hindrance when I have low damage and lowish health, and not many flasks. There's not much to talk about in Karthus Catacombs, only that I got invaded before I died, so 4 invasions gone wrong my way. However, there's one thing here that we should discuss: Smoldering Lake. So as you know, you have to break this bridge on the way to Wolnir to get to the Smoldering Lake and the Demon Ruins. But as you probably also know, this bridge will be fixed if you reset the area, be it by dying or fast traveling. So that does beg the question: what happens if you do die while down in the lake or ruins? On the separate character I'm showing right now, I went ahead and tested to see what happens. If you were to rest at the bonfire down here, it looks like the bridge ladder stays there, meaning that you could at the very least explore here and rest without much trouble, assuming that traveling too far doesn't reset the bridge anyway. But what happens if you die? Well, yeah. So dying will reset the bridge, cutting off your only way back up to the catacombs of Karthus proper. Now, if you're comfortable doing this entire area without dying, good for you. I'm not risking it, especially at low level. But yeah, this technically means Smoldering Lake could maybe be safe to do, but only under the assumption that you don't die. And also assuming that traveling far away won't fix the bridge due to render distance or something. So now to Wolnir, I switched out to the Soulsword Twin Blades, which I did pick up earlier, as I thought that'd be the best DPS I could get at low level with no upgrades. It did seem okay, at least during the first bracelet. The second did take a little longer, but I did break it. And then the piece of shit just instantly moved forward and destroyed me early on in the third bracelet. The second attempt, the bracelets took longer to break, and for the third one, he did end up summoning the skeletons, which made me a little concerned. But thankfully that specific animation leaves the right hand vulnerable for a long time, so I was able to break the last bracelet before it became a problem. Over on Nerothil, I was originally going to kill the enemies in order to get through more safely, but my damage is starting to seriously lack, leading to pretty fast deaths on my part. So I just decided to run by, only dying once doing that, and then making it to the Church of Yorshka here. On the way to Distant Manor, I was a little more proactive in fighting, since it wasn't as bad. Once I made it there, I had a forking path ahead of me. I could go down this stairway to go to Yorm in Nerothil Dungeon, or I could continue going deeper into Irithyll Dvori Valley to get to Pontiff, and eventually Aldrich in Anor Londo. If I pick Aldrich first, that only means I have to return from the church to Distant Manor, which isn't super far or intense, so I decided to go there first. as the Earthel dungeon is far more tricky and windy, so I have to do a very careful examination of the area for this run. This awful part with the dogs, which I tried to run through, went terribly, though I was mid-rolling, since one of the rings was heavier than I thought it would be. In the second run by, I got this elevator and shortcut, but I did have this dog follow me. I was eventually able to equip a weapon, but by then the dog had fallen on his own. After only a little pain, I was able to get the final shortcut to Pontiff, so I was ready for him. Now, maybe I should have expected this more than I really did, but this became my first skill wall, perhaps in the entire series that I've done so far, not just in this game. At least from the videos I've finished publishing. I say this not because I was gonna be endlessly stuck. I did well in even some early runs with parry or posts, but genuinely, I don't think I've been stuck on a boss for these runs for more than a few attempts. But of course, if I only had to deal with Pontiff alone, the fight would have been over before I even started this sentence. But the Shadow Clone does complicate matters. I started off with the Rapier for riposts, and was gonna switch to Irithel's Straight-Sword for frost damage, but it turned out the strategy was Bandit Knife for both riposts and damage. He didn't seem to frost, and the bleed does help a good amount. I ended up dying 22 times. Here was my successful run. I didn't end up using too many resources either, just a few embers, but I did burn through the green blossoms I had, which I'm okay with. I mostly used those since I couldn't have the Grass Crest shield out, since I needed a better parry shield. Glad I got that done within a reasonable amount of time, but it does give Aldrich a bit of foreboding, since that fight has a few factors that make it a little more troublesome than just trying to dodge all the attacks. But either way, for now, let's go to Enerlondo. I pretty much just ran through. I just know I'm gonna have a headache ahead of me anyway, and that's because of this fucking thing, which I tried to kill for a little while to get the Aldrich Ruby, since that feels like it could be useful in exploration and some bosses, and it turned out to be super annoying, not being able to stagger it. But anyway, on to Aldrich. And it took longer than Pontiff. Funnily enough, taking the exact same number of attempts after I went back and counted them, being at 22 deaths. I guess that's my lucky number. But it took longer because every attempt took longer, and they were far more boring. Because of my low health, I mostly ended up waiting and waiting and waiting for an attack that I can actually punish safely, usually the melee ones, and it was just a pain in the ass. At least Pontiff was fairly dynamic, even though there was some waiting there too, but I want to say 70% of the fight with Aldrich was waiting for him to stop spamming arrows and the little magic bullets, which are definitely his most common attacks, and the two I can't punish almost at all. I'm not even going to show my failed attempts, I'm just going to play my successful run as I talk here, and show you what I was doing. I ended up switching between Irithyll and Bandit Knife to alternate status effects, but instead of having them on hand, I switched them in the menu when he teleported, because I wanted to have the rings I have now for damage and defense, but also still fast roll. I'm glad it's done, it was not fun. But I will say that the reward after the boss is pretty good for me. The Sun Princess ring, for passive HP regen. It's a godsend with how little flask I have, especially with long encounters. Now, when I was routing this in my head, I originally was going to backtrack through the area after Pontiff, but when I was getting to Aldrich, I was reminded of this tower. So I took that, and it literally put me right at the Church of Yorshka, which is where I needed to be to get back to Distant Manor. So that's a pretty sick shortcut for this run, because any other time it would be completely useless. Props to Dark Souls 3 for that one, and I'm extra glad I did this before Yorm. Speaking of which, on our way to Irithyll Dungeon. I was fully planning to explore a little bit, but I did get invaded by Alva in fashion for these runs. I did make sure to be careful with drop downs. As I said, that's the main thing that concerns us. I always need to make sure I have a way back if I drop down anywhere. And surprisingly, there wasn't many drop downs like that I noticed, at least on the mandatory path. This area right here I was worried about because there are drop downs, but there's even a ladder with a door that you can take, and there's a ladder after the giant too. And that's all, not to mention there's a shortcut back to the first area of the dungeon, so it wasn't as bad as I thought. Now, since I mentioned this shortcut, I should mention this, because we do have Archer Dragon Peak in view. And as you can probably guess, that area will be off limits in this run, unfortunately. As you have to teleport there via meditation, which I would allow, but you don't have a way back outside of bonfire travel. There's this drop down in Profane Capital, but next to it there's a ladder, so you can't climb back up right away. I wanted to rest, but fucking Altia was still in my world. So I was going to have to do Yorm with one flask, I guess. Christ. But I mean, yeah, there's this big ladder, and then it's a straight shot to the boss. So it looks like there's no one-way path in this area either. I waited to get full health in the interest of the fog, unequipped my weapons, and then I went in. After having those last two rough boss fights, it was nice having this fight where outside of my health bar being short, it doesn't matter what my normal damage is. It's a lot more relaxed for me. And it went pretty smoothly. I didn't get hit. The only miss is that I literally missed my first attack, since I thought I was able to free aim the weapon art, but it kind of logged my direction. I was trying not to hit the head on the first hit, because I believe if you do, it immediately sends him to phase 2. And then after that, we get warped to the Dancer Arena. Now, for mandatory warps like this, that the game forces on you, which this one sort of is, I think you can bypass it by quitting out, but you're definitely supposed to take it. I generally allow that kind for these runs, so I wouldn't count it as a fast travel. And it's a handy one too, because if you recall, we can't return to the high wall from Undead Settlement. So this would be the only way back there without breaking the rules. I did quickly go to the Bort Bonfire to get my flask back. I don't think I could do Dancer with just one flask. For the love of God, don't raise banner here. If you do a run like mine, you'll be soft locked under my rule set. But yeah, on our way to Dancer, which while being a little difficult, I expect will be more reliable than Pontiff and Aldrich. And sure enough, I got her 4th try. I'm definitely more comfortable with her very smooth animations, and not many external chaotic factors, like Pontiff's clones or Aldrich's nonsense. I tried Irithyll's sword briefly to see if she frosted, but somewhat predictably she does not. So I just stuck with Bandit Knife, which got a handful of bleeds off. Now onto Lothar Castle proper, let's get this out of the way. So Osiris in itself is fine to kill, there's nothing stopping you from coming back up to the castle. But beyond that, there is this drop down after Osiris to get the Champion Gundyr, which you cannot return from. So Untented Graves is also beyond our run. I'm going to skip Osiris because I just don't want to bother with him, when I know I might still have some ass kicking ahead of me. Let's just get to exploring the castle. From this point onward, I'm rarely gonna mess around with enemies. Some basic enemies are taking an eternity alone to kill, let alone the stronger ones that actually have the capability to one-shot me. It's useful to have lowering skulls, but I only had 5 when I started using them, so I'll try using them wisely. The dragon segment was a little hairy. I figured I could get through a little more safely than I actually did, so I ended up quitting out to not take more fire damage on the ground, which was the right call, as I was almost dead, and the ground damage would have certainly chipped me. I beelined to the lever that raises the gate door, then doubled back to activate the dragon leg pus of man thing to kill the dragons, using the lowering skulls here and there to be a little safer. And then I dropped down, grab the elevator here, and now I have all the shortcuts unlocked here. I decided I'll be running the boss from the bonfire in Dance's room with this elevator, so here we are at Dragon Slayer armor, which went pretty smoothly, just a few attempts. I'll definitely fully credit the frost weakness. This mofo is weaker to frost than like any boss in Elden Ring is weak to bleed, which is saying a lot. He only took 2 or 3 hits to refrost once I hit him with fire, so it was definitely a good aid to have on hand, and made this fight go smoothly. I then ended up popping an Ember, and even a Divine Blessing. Despite it not being as challenging, and I could just retry if I died, I had a good run, so why not? I might end up not using those otherwise. Finally, for the Grand Archives. Okay, we can end the run here. This is my real goal all along. I was not as concerned about the archives as I was the previous area, but I did have one more learning skull in case of emergencies. There wasn't much to comment on until I got the shortcut with the bookcase, and then killed the Crystal Sage after that, so it won't be a nuisance anymore. Shortly after that, I did end up dying, but thankfully it was after I already hit the shortcut, so no biggie. This gargoyle was also a piece of shit not long after, so that's fun. I ran past the Boletaria trio of wannabes, got the shortcut, and even rested, as this is the one area here that I'm definitely concerned about coming up, where I may actually use my last luring skull. After getting hit once, leading me to need to heal, I did end up throwing that last skull, and I did manage to get the elevator here for Lothric Castle. Then I guess something followed me and fell into the elevator shaft, because it did drop an ember and titanite chunks. I don't even know what drops that. Look at my souls though. Nice. But yeah, finally we're at the last Lord of Cinder, Lothric. I'm pretty confident that I can get it done pretty fast. My second attempt got it to second phase, although I did burn through all my flasks, which is unfortunate. I used an ember, it lasted a little while, but I did get got by this attack. So I guess I should stay away because the hitbox of that is a little bit awkward. I did end up grinding him for a little while longer than I thought I would. And look what happened in one of the runs. Well, I thought I could keep him to the very end, but guess not. Oh well, at least I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now, despite it taking more attempts than I thought it would, it took 13. Look at my successful run. Yep, that was a pretty goddamn clean run. I know I bragged a bit about being confident at this boss, but I didn't expect that. But yeah, now we have all the Lord of Cinder Ashes. So we do have to go back to Firelink Shrine to place these. Meaning that's 2 times we broke the rules in order to get the run going. This time to finish the run. Here's what I'll do as a sort of compromise. I won't travel to Firelink from this Lothric bonfire. I will travel all the way back to the first high wall bonfire to make this travel as organic as possible, treating it as if Firelink was directly tied to that bonfire only. It doesn't mean we bypass the rules by any means. You still can't beat the game on that fast travel. But in order to see the end of the game and wrap this specific challenge with a bow, I'll be doing this. Despite it not being that far, honestly. But I put some respect on these shortcuts for making this trip pretty seamless, despite likely being unattended to be used like I am now. It was funny fighting these dogs from the very beginning of the game, because technically, I'm literally still at the same level I was when I first killed them. The only difference is I have more powerful rings now. But yeah, we're in Firelink Shrine now, which means we're set to beat the game. But that's not the only thing that means... Despite me losing the entirety of my souls from the run, like literally, since I died during Lothric and lost them there, I certainly could have gotten many more levels. But funnily enough, I did get almost the exact amount of souls I lost at Lothric solely by popping the consumable souls. I will say, this was an incredibly satisfying feeling, being able to pump the stats after the endurance it took to get to this point. Just so you know, I did the math, the amount of souls I lost up until this point before popping these was above 550,000. So that was my beat. But yeah, now that we're kitted out, let's place these lords in their thrones and make our way to Soul of Cinder for a pretty normal fight. Since both of these warps here are sort of mandatory for progression and just tunnels you to the end of the game, I will allow them. Not that it matters, of course. We already broke the rules twice. But yeah, here we are. Last boss of Dark Souls 3. But yeah, as we witnessed, you can't beat this game without fast traveling. But if you proceed into High Wall and begin your restrictions there, you will have to beat the game with whatever level you originally left Firelink Shrine, and same goes for the weapon upgrades, Estus Flasks, and all that. And you won't have a chance to level up anything until the very end. But from there, you get a surprisingly satisfying victory lap. Now, would I recommend you do a run like this? Well, to some degree, this is the first genuine challenge run you have to do from the games I've done so far. Otherwise, they're just novelty runs, really, and not that challenging. So you definitely have to be prepared to do that. I'll admit I didn't have a great time for the first day I recorded, being the beginning up until Abyss Watchers. Abyss Watchers themselves are fine, but I don't love a lot of the areas before that. They're what normally deters me from playing the game over from the beginning, as I do find the world exploration not nearly as good as Dark Souls 1, and there's definitely a lot of annoying enemies in this game. I do enjoy the bosses, though we did skip a handful of my favorites, but I'll admit the second and last day of recording were much more enjoyable. Pontiff and Lothric both felt like satisfying victories, and the victory lap to Soul of Cinder was gratifying after all that struggle. The lack of Lloyd's shield ring also makes this tougher in a unique way than even something like Soul Level 1 might not be, as that ring helps immensely. At least in Soul Level 1 you can upgrade weapons despite having low levels. And I'm saying that as someone who has done a Soul Level 1 of this game entirely, including the DLCs. But I'd also say that I didn't get one shot near as much as I definitely would have in like Elden Ring if I were low level by the end of the game. So it could be worse. So, if you're into novelty challenge runs, yeah, by all means, go for it. Especially if you like this game. Otherwise, maybe you'd want to skip this one. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. There's plenty more where that came from, and there will be more in the future.